Okay, this is just a quick video showing how to set up the Bind REST API project that I made. So I'm running on Ubuntu 20.04. So having a look here, I have Python installed. Python version is 3.85. And also I've got Poetry installed. So Poetry is a tool to manage the dependencies for a project. So there's my Poetry version. Uh, It's the latest at the moment. Now I can clone the project. I should have it here somewhere. Okay. So if we go into the project, we now need to run Poetry install to install the dependency. So we see here we have this pyproject.toml. This contains the dependencies. So it's basically we need this DNS Python library that will create the DNS updates. Then also Fast API to make the API interface. So basically we can just run here Poetry install, and this will install the project. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned in the documentation is that Poetry, if you're not already in a virtual environment, will install itself into a virtual environment always. So that's possibly what's going on here. So if I now do a pip list here, um, in fact, I think it's a pip3 list. Well, you can see that it's still not finding the dependencies, even though I've just installed it. So what I'm going to do here is type Poetry shell, and this will put me inside the virtual environment that it's created for me. And now I can do a pip list, and you'll see that I've got this DNS Python library and stuff all installed. So um, that could be where you might run into issues. Okay, so now we need to copy the example config just to a file called config.env. Then we'll edit this config.env. So we've got here our instructions. So Flask app, Flask environment. The main ones here we need to customize are our bind server. So I've got my bind server over here in the second tab. So if I do IP address, you can see I'm running it internally here on this IP. So this is the one I want to talk to. tsig username. So this is the username for the tsig key you're using. So if I have a look here at etc bind, I have the API tsig key here. So my name is API-tsig-key. So I'll put that in there. Tsig password. So obviously I need to get this secret here. And then also the allowed zones, the zones that it's allowed to create records for. So I'm going to put in here h.jtucky.name. So that's the zone that it's allowed to control. And then we've also got the API key file here. So this is the one we need to customize as well. I'm going to change that to API keys.pass. And then also a logging application name, particularly because if you run two instances of this, one against a dev server and a production server, you may want to change the name of the logs so you can grep them easily. So I'll say h.jtucky.name. So now I should be able to find the logs easy. So I'll save this file. Now let's copy the API example API keys pass to just API keys pass. So this matches the if we look back in the config, this matches the file name that we're passing in for the API keys. And let's have a look at that API keys.pass. So look, in this case, I'm just going to leave it as this super insecure key. So you have here the key name. This is used in the logs to provide this key did this action. And this is the password. Obviously, don't use this password. Make sure you generate a very long password because there's no brute force protection in this tool. if someone is just hitting the API over and over again, they'll be able to try many passwords very quickly, so go super long. Okay, so now we have done that. Now we need the environment variables that we've set in this config.env file in our environment. So I'm going to say export. Now this, if you're running in Bash, which is probably what you're going to be doing, I'm using the fish shell at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-execute it under Bash. I'm going to say poetry shell to make sure I'm in my poetry virtual environment. So we're already activated. And now I'm going to say export dollar cat config.env. So that should now put all the settings in my virtual environment, in my environment variables. So if I type env and grep for bind, you can see I've got the bind server and the allowed zone set up, so that's all good. So now let's give this a shot. Let's see if I followed my instructions correctly. So we'll run this Uvicorn bind app. Okay, cool. And now we've got Uvicorns running here on this local IP address. And we have here, detail not found. Now the interesting one here is to go to /docs. And this will give you the full Swagger documentation, including all the endpoints. So this is where you want to start using the API. So hit the authorize button up here. Now here you need to put in an API key. So this is put in a header when you make a request. So what we can do is if we have a look here, let me just open a second shell here. I'll just make that a bit bigger. So if we go back to our API keys.parse file, our actual key here is here. So obviously whatever you've set. Okay, so now we've got that set and we can start doing tests. So we can go try it out on DNS zone name, h.jtucky.name, and we can click execute. And you can see the response is at 200, so it's a good response, and it has dumped here my zone file into a JSON format. And we can also create and delete records. So if I just grab that and we go down here to DNS records, so I'm going to say put. Put will always remove any existing records and create a new one, or you can do create. So if you want to make 2 A records, you need to use post to create them. So I'll just demo that now. So let's go post, try it out. Chuck in h.jtucky.name. Now we don't want to create a top level one, obviously. So let's say test rec.h.jtucky.name. So let's make an A record and we'll say 10.1.1.99 there. We'll just make an A record there and we'll hit execute. And we get back a response, 200 error code, which means success. Now we'll do this a second time. So I'm going to do it with 99 and 199. So because I am using post here, we can execute again. And now we should have 2 A records for this host name. So let's copy that now and go back to get record. I'm going to go try it out. And I'm going to chuck in there testrec.h.jtucky.name. We'll get back all the record types. There should only be an A record for this one, and we'll execute. And you see back we get A, and then there's two addresses there for that record. So the other trick is now when you want to put these in your scripts and stuff, you have here a big curl command that you can use. So you can copy that, and then you can execute these commands here. And so you can see I get back the JSON record there. Just obviously when you put these in your scripts, be aware that the API key is right there in the request. So you may want to hide that in a file and then say bring it in with an environment variable or something like that. That's it from me.